I should have known it would end this way. My daughter Olivia looked stunning in her wedding dress, but the hatred in her eyes as she screamed, "Get out! You're ruining everything!" tore through me like a knife. The entire reception hall fell silent as I stood there, humiliated and broken, while 150 guests stared in shock. Then, to my horror, my ex-husband Richard stood up from his table, looked directly at me, and began to clap slowly, deliberately, triumphantly. One by one, his new wife and her family joined in the applause as I stumbled toward the exit, my vision blurred by tears. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by your own child? Have you ever felt the crushing weight of family betrayal? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to know which city you're listening from and if something similar has happened to you. If you enjoy this story, please support me by sending a super thanks so I can continue bringing more stories like this. My name is Margaret Collins. I'm 58 years old, and for the past 15 years, I've lived with the consequences of a decision that destroyed my family. At least that's what they all believe. When Olivia was 12 and her brother Thomas was 10, I discovered that Richard had been having an affair with his secretary, Amanda. It wasn't just a fling, it had been going on for 3 years. I found emails, hotel receipts, even a secret phone. When confronted, Richard didn't even deny it. Instead, he told me he'd fallen in love with Amanda and wanted a divorce. "She understands me in ways you never could," he said without a trace of remorse. "I want to build a life with her." The divorce was ugly. Richard was a successful investment banker, and he used every legal trick to minimize what he had to pay in alimony and child support. He hired an aggressive lawyer who painted me as an uninvolved mother who had driven Richard to seek companionship elsewhere. It wasn't true. I had put my own career as an architect on hold to raise our children while Richard built his empire. But in the courtroom, his financial power translated to legal advantage. What hurt more than the financial battle was how Richard manipulated our children. He took them on lavish vacations with Amanda, bought them expensive gifts, and slowly planted a narrative. I was the villain who had destroyed their perfect family by being cold, distant, and unwilling to fight for the marriage. He never told them about his affair. In his version, I had simply given up on our family. "Your mother wants her freedom more than she wants us," I overheard him telling Olivia one day when he thought I wasn't listening. "That's why she asked for the divorce." I was stunned by the lie, but thought the truth would eventually come out. I didn't want to drag our children into adult matters or turn them against their father. I believed they were old enough to form their own opinions, and that with time, they would see through Richard's manipulation. I was wrong. As the years passed, Richard and Amanda married and created a picture-perfect blended family. They had a daughter together, Sophia, whom my children adored. Their home became the fun place with minimal rules, while mine became the place with responsibilities, homework supervision, and normal teenage boundaries. Whenever I enforced a rule Olivia or Thomas didn't like, they would threaten to go live with their father. By the time Olivia was 17, she had fully embraced her father's narrative. "You never really loved Dad," she accused me during one heated argument. "You were always too busy with your career plans to care about our family." The irony was painful. I had sacrificed my career for our family, turning down a partnership at a prestigious firm to be more available for the children. Now, those same children believed I had prioritized work over them. When Olivia turned 18, she moved in with Richard and Amanda permanently. Thomas followed a year later. My house, once filled with the chaos and joy of family life, fell silent. I found myself alone at 45, with a half-built career and children who viewed me as the cause of their pain. I tried to rebuild my architecture practice, taking small projects at first, then gradually securing larger contracts. Work became my salvation, the place where my efforts were appreciated and my decisions respected. I bought a small but elegant condominium downtown and created a life that was, if not happy, at least meaningful. The invitations to school events, graduations, and holiday gatherings became increasingly rare. When I did attend, I was seated far from the main family group, treated like a distant relative rather than a mother. Richard, Amanda, and their perfect little girl would be at the center of everything, with Olivia and Thomas orbiting around them like planets around a sun. I kept trying to maintain a relationship with my children, sending birthday gifts, suggesting lunch dates, calling regularly. Most of my calls went to voicemail. Most of my invitations were declined with vague excuses. Most of my gifts were acknowledged with brief, formal thank you texts that felt like they'd been sent under duress. Then came the call that changed everything. Olivia, now 27, was engaged to Jason, her boyfriend of 3 years. She called to inform me not to share the happy news with excitement, but to officially notify me, her tone businesslike and distant. "The wedding will be next June," she said. "I'll send you an invitation with the details." "Olivia, that's wonderful news. I'd love to help with the planning if you—" "That won't be necessary," she interrupted. "Amanda is helping me. She has excellent taste and knows exactly what I want." The pain was sharp but familiar. I had long ago accepted that Amanda had taken my place in my children's lives, but each new reminder still hurt. "Of course," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But if there's anything I can do—" "Actually, there is," Olivia said. "I need you to understand something. Dad will be walking me down the aisle, and he and Amanda will be seated in the front row as parents of the bride. You'll be seated with the extended family." I closed my eyes, absorbing the blow. "I see. And one more thing," she continued. "The rehearsal dinner will be intimate, just the wedding party, Jason's parents, and Dad and Amanda. So you don't need to attend that." "Olivia," I said carefully, "I'm still your mother. Are you sure this is how you want things to be on your wedding day?" There was a pause, and for a moment I thought I might have reached her. Then her voice came back colder than ever. "This is my day, Mom. I get to decide how I want it to be. If you can't respect that, you don't have to come at all." The formal invitation arrived 3 months later, addressed simply to Miss Margaret Collins, as if I were a distant acquaintance. I ran my fingers over the embossed lettering, the elegant design speaking of Richard's generosity. No expense had been spared for his princess. I debated whether to attend. Every instinct told me it would be another exercise in humiliation, another reminder of my outsider status in my own family. But not going to my only daughter's wedding seemed unthinkable. I still held on to a flicker of hope that someday, somehow, we could rebuild our relationship. So I bought a tasteful blue dress, had my hair and makeup professionally done, and selected a pair of antique sapphire earrings that had belonged to my grandmother as my gift to Olivia. They had been passed down through generations of women in our family, and despite everything, I wanted to continue that tradition. The church was magnificent, decorated with cascades of white roses and lilies. I arrived early and took my assigned seat, 7 rows back on the bride's side, next to cousins I barely knew. I watched as the front rows filled with Richard's colleagues, Amanda's large family, and their shared friends. A special chair had been decorated for Amanda with a Mother of the Bride sash. No such designation was made for me. The ceremony was beautiful. Olivia looked radiant as Richard walked her down the aisle, his chest puffed with pride. I wiped away tears that were equal parts joy for her happiness and grief for all I had lost. When the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be married?" Richard's voice rang out clear and confident. "Her mother and I do." The words were traditional, but the exclusion of Amanda from that statement gave me a tiny, probably petty satisfaction. At the reception, I was seated at a back table with distant relatives and a few of Richard's elderly aunts who didn't know my history and kept asking confused questions about which side of the family I was from. I watched as Richard and Olivia danced the father-daughter dance to Butterfly Kisses, a song about a father's unwavering love through his daughter's childhood. The irony was not lost on me. Richard had been largely absent during those early years, working late, taking international business trips, leaving the daily parenting to me. Now he twirled our daughter around the dance floor, the devoted father who had always been there. When it came time for toasts, Richard gave a moving speech about watching his little girl grow into an amazing woman, about supporting her through life's challenges, about being her rock and her safe harbor. The guests dabbed at their eyes as he spoke of family bonds that could never be broken. Not once did he acknowledge my role in raising Olivia. After dinner, I approached the head table with my gift. Olivia was surrounded by bridesmaids, laughing at something Amanda had said. Her smile faded when she saw me. "Congratulations, Olivia," I said, holding out the small velvet box. "I wanted to give you these personally. They were my grandmother's, and her mother's before that. I wore them on my wedding day, and I thought, I hoped you might want them." Olivia took the box reluctantly and opened it. The sapphires caught the light, their deep blue as intense as ever. "There's something old and something blue," I said with a small smile. "Thanks," she said flatly, closing the box without putting them on. "I already have my jewelry figured out, but I'll keep these for whatever." She set the box aside, clearly intending to move on with her conversation. I stood there awkwardly for a moment, then gathered my courage. Olivia, I know things have been difficult between us, but I want you to know how happy I am for you today. Jason seems like a wonderful man, and I hope you'll have all the joy in the world together. She gave me a tight smile. Thanks for coming. It was a dismissal, plain and simple. I nodded and turned to leave, but something made me stop and turn back. You know, I've respected your feelings all these years. I've kept my distance when you wanted space. I've never spoken ill of your father or Amanda. I've tried to be present without being intrusive, but I want you to know something. I have always loved you, Olivia. Always, even when you couldn't see it or believe it. Her expression hardened. Is that why you broke up our family? Because you loved us so much? The nearby conversations quieted. People were beginning to notice the tension. I didn't break up our family, Olivia. There are things you don't know. Don't! She cut me off sharply. Don't you dare try to rewrite history now. Dad told us everything. He told us how you were always dissatisfied, always wanting more success, more freedom, more everything. How you asked for the divorce because you felt trapped by family life. I stared at her, stunned anew by Richard's lies and by her absolute belief in them. That's not what happened, Olivia. Your father. Stop it! She suddenly screamed, her composure shattering completely. Stop trying to poison my wedding day with your lies. I don't want to hear it. The entire reception fell silent. All eyes turned to us. Olivia, please, I whispered, mortified by the scene but desperate to finally break through to her. I've never told you this because I didn't want to hurt you, but your father had an affair. Get out, she shouted, her face contorted with rage. Get out! You're ruining everything! I stood frozen, the room spinning around me. From somewhere near the head table, I heard a slow, deliberate clapping. Richard had stood up and was applauding, his face a mask of righteous satisfaction. Amanda joined him, then her parents, then several others at their table. The message was clear. I was finally getting what I deserved for daring to speak the truth. As I stumbled toward the exit, I passed Thomas, who sat rigid in his chair, staring at his plate, unwilling to look at me or to join in the awful applause. That tiny act of neutrality was the only mercy I received that night. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and sobbed until I had no tears left. 15 years of keeping the painful truth to myself, of taking the high road, of protecting my children from ugliness, and this was the result. I had lost them completely. The next morning, I woke to a text from Olivia. I hope you're satisfied. You always have to make everything about you. Don't contact me or Thomas again. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say? Instead, I called my travel agent and booked a 3-week trip to Italy, a dream I had postponed for decades. If I was truly cut off from my children, I might as well begin living for myself. Florence was everything I had imagined in my years of architectural study. I wandered the streets with my sketchbook, marveling at the Renaissance masterpieces, finding solace in beauty that had endured centuries of human drama. In Rome, I sat in tiny cafes and watched the world go by, slowly reconnecting with the passionate young woman I had been before marriage and motherhood consumed my identity. On my second week there, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. Mom, it's Thomas. My heart leapt at the sound of my son's voice. Thomas, is everything okay? Not really, he said, his voice subdued. After you left the wedding, things got weird. Dad was triumphant, like he'd won some kind of victory. It felt really off. I said nothing, letting him continue. Then Jason's mother cornered me. She said she'd overheard you saying something about Dad having an affair before the divorce. She wanted to know if it was true. I closed my eyes. What did you tell her? I said I didn't know, but it got me thinking. I was only 10 when you guys split up. I always just believed what Dad told us. But was there really an affair, Mom? The question I had waited 15 years to answer hung between us. I took a deep breath. Yes, Thomas, your father had been seeing Amanda for 3 years before I found out. That's why I filed for divorce. There was a long silence. Then, why didn't you ever tell us? I didn't want to burden you with adult problems. I didn't want to turn you against your father, I thought. I thought that eventually the truth would come out in a natural way. I thought you would figure it out when you were older. But instead, we hated you for years for something that wasn't even your fault, he said, his voice cracking. "Dad deliberately lied to us." "He's still your father, Thomas. He loves you, even if he made terrible choices." "Stop it, Mom," Thomas said, anger creeping into his voice. "Stop defending him. You've been protecting him all this time, taking all the blame. And for what? So we could worship him while treating you like garbage?" I had no answer for that. "I confronted him," Thomas continued. "After I talked to Jason's mom, I went to Dad's house and asked him point blank if he'd had an affair with Amanda before the divorce. He tried to dodge at first, then he got angry, but finally, he admitted it. He actually tried to justify it, saying you were emotionally unavailable and that I was too young to understand adult relationships." My heart ached for my son, facing this painful disillusionment. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. I never wanted you to be hurt this way." "I'm not a child anymore, Mom. I'm 25. I deserve to know the truth. We both did." "Yes," I said simply. "You did." "Olivia won't believe it," he said after a pause. "She doesn't want to. She and Dad have always been so close, and she's built her whole identity around being Daddy's perfect girl. Finding out he's been lying to her all this time, it would break something in her." I understood then that my daughter might never be ready to face the truth. Some illusions are too precious to surrender, even at the cost of other relationships. "Have you told her what Dad admitted?" I asked. "I tried. She accused me of betraying the family and said I was being manipulated by you. She's not speaking to me now either." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of this new rupture between my children. "I'm so sorry, Thomas. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid all these years." "Don't apologize, Mom. This isn't your fault. It's Dad's fault for lying, and it's our fault for being too willing to believe the worst about you." After we hung up, I sat on my hotel balcony watching the sun set over the Arno River, feeling a complex mix of vindication, sorrow, and cautious hope. Thomas knew the truth now. Our relationship had a chance to heal, but Olivia remained locked in her father's fabricated reality, and I had to accept that she might stay there forever. When I returned from Italy, Thomas came to visit me at my condominium. It was awkward at first. 15 years of emotional distance doesn't disappear overnight. But as we talked, really talked, for the first time since he was a boy, I saw glimpses of the sweet, thoughtful child I had raised. "I went through some old photo albums at Dad's house," he told me. "The ones from before the divorce. I found pictures of you at all my Little League games, all Olivia's dance recitals. You were always there. Dad was in hardly any of them. How did we forget that?" "Children see what they're looking for," I said gently, "and your father gave you a story that was easier to accept than the complicated truth." Thomas has visited regularly in the months since then. He's brought his girlfriend, Sarah, who is warm and kind and clearly makes him happy. We're slowly rebuilding our relationship, finding our way back to trust and understanding. He's even talked about going into architecture, perhaps joining my firm someday. Olivia remains estranged. She returned the sapphire earrings in a small, padded envelope with no note. Thomas tells me she and Jason are buying a house near Richard and Amanda, continuing the family narrative that has worked so well for them. I've sent cards on her birthday and Christmas, but I've respected her wish for no direct contact. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice all those years ago. If I had told my children the truth, immediately shown them the evidence of their father's betrayal, fought harder in the court of family opinion, would things be different now? Would I have had 15 more years with my children, or would they have resented me even more for tarnishing their image of their father? I'll never know, but I've found a measure of peace in being true to myself at last. My architecture firm is thriving. I just won a major contract to design a new performing arts center downtown. I've made new friends, joined a hiking group, even started dating occasionally. At 58, I'm finally living the life that was put on hold when I was 22 and pregnant with Olivia. Last week, I received a large envelope in the mail. Inside was a wedding photo, not of Olivia and Jason, but of Richard and me on our wedding day 30 years ago. I'm wearing the sapphire earrings, smiling with the innocent certainty that we would be together forever. Richard looks handsome and confident, his hand possessively on my waist. Paperclipped to the photo was a note in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Found this while helping Richard clean out storage. Thought you might want it. Also, for what it's worth, I believe you about the affair. Jason's mother told me what happened at the reception. I'm sorry my wife treated you so badly, Jason." I studied the photo for a long time, remembering the young woman I had been and acknowledging how far I've come since then. Then I put it away in a drawer, not because it was too painful to see, but because it represents a past that no longer defines me. My daughter screamed at me to leave her wedding, and my ex-husband stood up and clapped. It was the most painful moment of my life, but also, strangely, the most liberating. In that moment of complete rejection, I was finally free from the burden of Richard's lies and the exhausting effort of trying to be the perfect mother to children who couldn't see me clearly. I don't know if Olivia will ever be ready to hear the truth. I don't know if we'll ever have the mother-daughter relationship I still long for. But I do know this. I am more than just a mother whose children turned away. I am more than a woman who was betrayed by her husband. I am Margaret Collins, architect, friend, hiker, survivor. And after decades of living for others, I am finally, triumphantly, living for myself. If you enjoyed my story, please don't forget to like, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss my new life stories. Your support means everything to me and helps me continue sharing these real experiences. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.